Little Shepherd of Kingdom Come by John Fox Jr., Chapter 2, Part 3. "What have them fellers got on their faces?" Chad asked. Tom laughed. "Ain't you never seed a black folks afore?" he asked. Chad shook his head. "Lots of folks from your side of the mountains never have seed one," said Tom. "Sometimes it scares 'em." "It don't scare me," said Chad. At the gate of the barnyard, in which was a long stable with a deeply sloping roof, stood the old brindle cow, who turned to look at Jack. And as Chad followed the three brothers through the yard gate, he saw a slim, scarlet figure vanish swiftly from the porch into the house. In a few minutes, Chad was inside the big log cabin and before a big log fire with Jack between his knees, and turning his soft human eyes keenly from one to another of the group about his little master, telling how the mountain cholera had carried off the man and the woman who had been father and mother to him and their children, at which the old mother nodded her head in growing sympathy, for there were two fresh mounds in her own graveyard on the point of a low hill not far away. How old Nathan Cherry, whom he hated, had wanted to bind him out, and how rather than have Jack mistreated and himself be ill-used, he'd run away along the mountain top, and how he'd slept one night under a log with Jack to keep him warm, and how he'd eaten sassafras and birch bark and had gotten drink from the green water bulbs of the wild honeysuckle, and how on the second day, being hungry, without powder for his gun, he'd started when the sun sank for the shadows of the valley at the mouth of Kingdom Come. Before he was done, the old mother knocked the ashes from her clay pipe and quietly went into the kitchen, and Jack, for all his good manners, could not restrain a whine of eagerness when he heard the crackle of bacon in a frying pan, and the delicious smell of it struck his quivering nostrils. After dark, old Joel, the father of the house, came in, a giant in size and a mighty hunter, and he slapped his big thighs and roared until the rafters seemed to shake when tall Tom told him about the dog fight and the boy fight with the family in the next cove, for already the clan ship was forming that was to add the last horror to the coming great war and prolong that horror for nearly half a century after its close. By and by, the scarlet figure of little Melissa came shyly out of a dark shadow behind and drew shyly closer and closer until she was crouched in the chimney corner with her face shaded from the fire by one hand and a tangle of yellow hair, listening and watching him with her big solemn eyes, quite fearlessly. Already the house was full of children and dependents, but no word passed between old Joel and the mother, for no word was necessary. Two waifs who had so suffered and who could so fight could have a home under that roof if they pleased, forever. And Chad's sturdy little body lay deep in a feather bed, and the friendly shadows from a big fireplace flickered hardly thrice over him before he was asleep. And Jack, for that night at least, was allowed to curl up by the covered coals, or stretch out his tired feet, if he pleased, to a warmth that in all the nights of his life, perhaps, he'd never before known. End of Chapter 2.